We continue our conversation now on Jersey Matters with physician Nina Radcliff about concussions, because I know that if you're a parent or you're a coach or if you're an athlete, this is something that is in the forefront of the discussion right now about high school and collegiate athletics, even elementary athletics. So let's start at the beginning. I told you I jumped ahead. Let's start with what a concussion is.
Well, it's a traumatic brain injury. It's anytime your brain gets jolted, jarred, shaken within your skull or against it. And what happens when this occurs is that there can be injury to the brain cells, what we call neurons. It can also cause injury to the connective tissue around it. And as we've done more research, we're finding that it can cause metabolic changes. For example, your brain may not be able to clear toxins, things that can cause damage to the cells, or it may have electrolyte shifts where the sodium or the potassium may get altered. And this means a lot when we're sitting there sending millions upon millions of signals every single second.
Explain that, the thing that made so much news recently, that was in the front page of every newspaper and all the networks covered, when they tested former NFL players and they saw a significant effect because of concussions. Tell us about that
Well,
study.
they call it CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's a lot of words, but basically it's degenerative brain disease that occurs from repetitive injuries to the brain. And what they found is of 112 former NFL players, 111, that's more than 99% of them, had chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
And that was the oh my God moment.
That is the oh my God moment. And what they also found is that people who, high school players who stopped after high school, who never played contact sports on a higher level, again, 20% of them also had CTE. So there is a risk. We're thinking, oh, fine, they'll play in high school, they'll go off to college, they're not playing anymore. Yes, this does have a significant impact.
When you say a significant impact, how dangerous is a CTE? What does that do to you?
Well, everybody's different. What they're basically saying is this is degenerative brain injury. So what extent? It can be mild, it can be moderate, it can be severe. It can be somebody they're more anxious, they're more depressed. There may be an increased risk for Alzheimer's. We don't have enough data to sit there and say that these players who are playing at this level, at this speed, they're going to be having Alzheimer's 20 or 30 years from now. But these are all things that can happen. Our brain is a soft organ with just a little bit of fluid around it that protects it from minor jolts and shakes. But when it's powerful enough, when there is a forcible enough injury, that's a problem.
How do you know if somebody has a concussion?
Well, that's the interesting thing. There's so many different signs, and every concussion can be different. Like we discussed earlier, not everybody has a loss of consciousness.
So a coach may not know, a child, even a child may not know, a parent may not know?
Well, it's very difficult because there's so many different types of symptoms. There can be nausea and vomiting, there can be dizziness, there can be confusion, there can be loss of memory of what happened around that time. And you have to remember, if I'm playing and I got a brain injury, I may not be the best person to make a decision. I'm having a problem because my brain is injured. So our cognition, our ability to think may be affected. So it really depends upon the people around you, the parents, the coaches, your teammates, to sit there and help understand what a concussion is. Is this person possibly at risk? They took a pretty hard hit. And you may have a hit to your body, but don't forget, your brain can sit there and be jolted back and forth against the skull, and that can be a concussion as well. So you don't have to have an injury just to your head.
So in the NFL, what they've been doing is anytime somebody has a hard hit to the head, they pull them out of the game and they have to go through a concussion protocol where they take a test. So in a high school game, in a college game, if somebody takes a hard hit to the head, that doesn't necessarily happen.
Correct.
That should happen, right?
It should happen.
They should be pulled out of the game.
Right, and that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to say during practice, high school students should not be tackling one another. They're trying to pass the targeting, or they pass the targeting for college football. There's a number of things that they're trying to do, but the main thing is awareness that, these students shouldn't be put back in the game. They shouldn't be there to, be part of the team and, not disappoint anybody. They have to understand there should be a no tolerance, zero tolerance of being put back in the game.
Right, and it does. I don't think that's happening at this point. So who needs to get involved? I mean, I know that I'm going beyond your realm of expertise, but does the state need to get involved? Does the government need to get involved in this?
Well, I think that first of all, shows like this where we're discussing this is starting to make people think, look, this is something serious. This can happen to my grade school student, and for what? We're sitting there putting our children at harm's way. So we really need to be discussing this more. What the exact answers? I'm not certain what it is, but we will get to that the more times we talk about it, gain more hands on deck, we do need to incorporate our legislators. Our children are our greatest legacy. We need to make sure that they stay safe. So we need to have these discussions.
And the target right now is on football's back because of the NFL. But as you mentioned cheerleading, you mentioned women's soccer, but kids in the playground.
Ice hockey, yeah, exactly, on the playground. I mean, when they're up 8 feet and they can fall and they can happen anytime, that's a problem. Even riding a bicycle, that can happen. Adults, older adults, just walking, if they have an injury or slip and fall, they can hit their head, and that can be detrimental to them as well.
Does it have to be several concussions, or can it just be one?
You know, that's the thing that's interesting. Every concussion, every person is different. It can be the force of the concussion. It can be other medical conditions that you may have. So there's a number of factors that play in.
You mentioned Ron Jaworski. That means you're an Eagles fan. I can tell
I'm a fan of Ron Jaworski.
That's the name that came up first. So, no, we all appreciate Ron Jaworski. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing
Physician
light
Nina
to this.
Radcliff talking about concussions. Hope you're more informed. Jersey Matters continues right after this. Coming up, Dawn takes us to one of the best bird watching spots in the world, and it's right here in New Jersey. That's coming up next.